Hello, fellow humans. My name's Hayoung Terra, and I was a leftist for half my life. This is my story of why I left the left. But first, a little background. I had long identified as a progressive liberal, referring to myself as one of the radical left and even a Marxist with pride and a sense of belonging. The first time I ventured into the realm of social justice was circa 2005 when I was 16 years old. I had become embroiled in conflict with a best friend in high school because she had stated her opinion that being gay was unnatural. I expressed my shock and disappointment, and we had a fight which lasted perhaps a couple of weeks, but which, as an adolescent for whom friends are everything, felt like forever. I decided I would actively fight against attitudes that could lead to so much harm and outright violence against marginalized groups, too many members of whom have, historically in the West, and currently in other places in the world, been discriminated against, and even brutalized and killed for the mere fact of who they were or whom they loved. Throughout my teens and early 20s, as I discovered and explored the world of sex, I was outraged to come across again and again demeaning double standards for masculine and feminine sexuality, and again spoke out against such sexist statements at every encounter. I would call out bigoted remarks wherever I encountered them, including social gatherings,
Inappropriate.
despite finding conflict incredibly stressful, especially as someone with ADHD and possibly ASD, and subsequent issues with emotional dysregulation. I would brandish my pen as a weapon, writing drug policy reform and feminist articles for any space on the internet that would publish my ideas, and became resolute in my identity. More than anything, I was a social justice warrior, and I would fight the good fight. My disillusionment with the left wing happened in 3 stages. In the first stage, as I was rejoicing at the turn of the tide and society's decreasing tolerance of intolerance, my feel-good train came to an abrupt halt in January of 2015, when the mob turned on actor Benedict Cumberbatch for his use of the antiquated term colored people. I watched the overwhelming and harsh backlash, bemused because although he used an outdated and historically painful word, he had in fact been lamenting the lack of diversity in the UK film industry. Did context mean nothing? Okay, I learned. I had to be wary of jumping to conclusions. I felt relieved and delighted in my conviction of the moral character of Benedict Cumberbatch when he modeled a t-shirt which read, "This is what a feminist looks like," only to learn that the gender equality and women's rights charity behind this cool and sexy campaign was allegedly getting their t-shirts from a factory in Mauritius in sweatshop conditions with predominantly female workers paid less than $1 an hour and sleeping 16 to a room. I decided then and there to tread more carefully, knowing that I could not blindly believe what I was told, nor what I saw on the surface, even if the group speaking was a tribe to which I belonged. Fast forward to 2016, when I first heard Dr. Jordan Peterson's name through allegations about a racist, sexist, transphobic, and evil right-wing university professor who refused to respect preferred pronouns. I upheld my new vow to not form an opinion without personal investigation, and tried to watch the Kathy Newman interview without bias. A few minutes in, however, the moment Dr. Peterson started talking about how women were more agreeable than men, it was as though my brain shut down immediately. I did not want to. I could not bear to listen. So I closed the video and simply thought, I just won't have an opinion on Professor Jordan Peterson then. The second stage was about a year and a half ago when I came across the YouTube channel of Russell Brand and was pleasantly astounded to find that the comedian from the rom-com Forgetting Sarah Marshall was in fact a political, philosophical, and spiritual leader the world needs. I was shocked further still when I watched a snippet of his interview with Dr. Jordan Peterson and listened to their discussion on masculinity and femininity, and thought of the latter, he's a feminist. You see, in spite of the conscious efforts and the declaration I made from my high moral ground that I would not form an opinion without thoroughly and objectively investigating myself, I had, after all, developed implicit bias. The third and final stage has taken place from 2017 to present, starting with the Me Too movement and the subsequent year when I moved to Japan to live and work abroad. Me Too was life-changing. It was a moment of awareness, solidarity, and comfort. not only bringing justice, but giving survivors a chance to process and understand what they had gone through. Thanks to Me Too, I was able to recognize some of my own experiences in my teens as sexual trauma and start healing. However, Me Too was also when I first heard the term believe all women, when I questioned the dangers inherent in such a blanket statement, and pointed out that the lives of falsely accused men can also be destroyed. The individual with whom I was talking, a fellow feminist and one of my closest friends, basically family, looked at me with an expression I'd never seen her wear. Her gorgeous and beloved face, for I did and still do truly love her, contorted with so much anger and disgust that I had to avert my gaze. Is due process not a sacred safeguard for the protection of individual rights in any democracy? Can we see now, 5 years later in a post-Depp v. Heard world, that justice is not blindly siding with and protecting members of one group identity over another? Fast forward a year later in Japan, where I had temporarily moved. Although I had planned on being a hermit to focus on writing a novel, I could not help but be social. Not only because we human beings are deeply social creatures, but because I was surrounded by like-minded peers, fellow creatives and empaths and social justice warriors. I felt like I was home. This was likely no coincidence, for the openness trait among the Big Five type personalities, which essentially equates to creativity and which, naturally, might predict the proclivity for living abroad, also predicts political liberalism. Among this new network of predominantly liberals abroad was a group of feminists who invoked in me not exactly feelings of belonging, but inspiration and awe. These young women, men, and non-binary individuals devoted their time, energy, and money to art and activism, organizing and performing in an episodic political play and art auction that spread awareness of both consensual and non-consensual sexuality, among other intersectional social issues, the benefits of which would be donated to a shelter for survivors of domestic abuse. I perceive them as beings of light, perhaps comparable to the Fae. Their magic and legendary powers manifest as unbound creativity and compassion. I dared not hope to ever be as cool as them. But my admiration did nothing to erase my deep discomfort and horror as I listened to one particular episode in this feminist play, which detailed a woman's account of learning about female pleasure at the age of 16, when a 24-year-old female neighbor gave her alcohol, then proceeded to have sex with her. Is it not statutory rape when the perpetrator is a woman? One member of this feminist group, who so beautifully expressed through poetry the idea that a woman's body and choices in clothing were purely and liberatingly her own, turned around and rebuked me for my choices in body piercing and length of hair. Is it only body shaming when members of certain groups do it and not others? I sat in further confusion as I read a text message from yet another member accusing my friend of sexual misconduct, branding them a predator in this feminist group chat. Even more bewildered when hearing that the very person making these allegations had unexpectedly kissed an acquaintance I had made by pure chance outside this social network. Is it only sexual misconduct when committed by someone other than ourselves? Next, as I braced myself in early 2020 at the news of the COVID-19 outbreak, having memories of the first SARS pandemic, and explicitly told a group of friends with whom I was partying one night that I did not want to hug anyone, one of these stalwart feminists and social justice warriors dove in for an embrace regardless. While I felt positive emotion from the physical touch, and from what was our mutual affection, my mind has been reeling since that moment of impact. Is consent a standard that applies differently based on the person disrespecting it? What are our principles exactly? Finally, as I began creating content to spread the words of Dr. Jordan Peterson, a figure whom, by this point, I saw as a literal savior who gave me the tools to rise above my nihilism and self-hating narcissism, the depression and the suicidal ideation that has plagued my mind since puberty. Although I still am narcissistic, obviously, I was reminded sharply and repeatedly of Dr. Peterson's reputation as an alleged sexist, racist, transphobic, right-wing climate denier, by leftist friends who ironically admitted that they do not want to support him despite never having interacted with his work. That in the same breath, they keep an open mind for sure, but not for white supremacists. Unable or unwilling to fathom that they could be, as I once was, wrong about Dr. Jordan Peterson. Are axiomatic truths only worth challenging when we personally do not like them? It was an incredibly heart-wrenching, yet equally sobering realization to make. That friends who had previously expressed trust and praise when I would promulgate the tenets of wokeism could no longer be reached by my words. A realization which begs the question, does it make a difference who it is that disagrees with far-left ideology, or the manner in which they express their disagreement? Or is it simply differing views that must be censored, dissent that must be suppressed? And did Lindsay Ellis ever stand a chance? My intent is not to publicly shame anyone, nor destroy reputations, our most valuable commodity as social creatures, and so have named no names, but rather to highlight that we on the left have somehow missed the main lesson from the very atrocities and bigotry we committed ourselves to fighting. That we are all human, with vulnerability and fallibility, capable of being hurt and of making mistakes, with tribal tendencies, naturally, since we evolved in small groups for survival, and with the same capacity for good and evil acts. This unforgiving, unempirical, and undemocratic mob that substitutes outrage for morality, performance for virtue, and vengeance for justice, so certain in their convictions and so punishing in their condemnations as to burn books, to cancel and ruin lives without ever having truly listened once, to equate the mere name or presence of conservatives with harm, to dramatize their own victimhood, to try to fight prejudice with prejudice, racism with racism, and tyranny with tyranny, to fiercely advocate the destruction of innocent bodies without stopping once to consider the possibility that we could be the ones in the wrong, even when there's everything at stake. So willfully blind of the way, step by step, we have naively and eagerly been giving unprecedented legal, technological, and economic powers to governments and pharmaceutical corporations that have historically proven again and again and again their untrustworthiness, all in the name of being woke. This is not the tribe of empathy, humanism, and reason that I thought I joined at the age of 16. What would George Orwell make of the current state of the West? Personally, I think he'd weep or shit his pants from disbelief and terror at the trajectory we're currently on, for he would know exactly where we are headed. A totalitarian society empowered by pervasive surveillance technology that compels our speech and thereby controls our very thoughts. I still believe that liberals could be champions of compassion, if only we could deign to take the time and really look at how, precisely, the ideology and policies we've pushed for have been affecting the most vulnerable members of our species, as well as our planet. I still believe in the core principles of liberal ideology, that no one should experience prejudice based on their race, ethnicity, sex, gender, sexual orientation, or religion. We are right. Of course we're right. The left has been right all along, and in our zealousness fueled by resentment, we have gone too far. This is my message to my former comrades, before I truly give up on them as parishioners of the new and powerful religion of wokeness, and accept my place as a modern heretic. We must, as Dr. Jordan Peterson and Mr. Russell Brand so urgently and rightly plead, wake up.